They say every neighborhood has that one guy who takes the HOA too seriously, but ours had Doyle Mason. This man strutted around like he wore a badge, clipboard tucked under one arm, phone always ready to snap pictures. He wasn't elected, he wasn't appointed, he just decided he was the HOA patrol. And last week, he crossed a line that Grandpa wasn't about to let slide. Before we dive in, comment which country you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. And scrambled to his feet, limping toward the street. Grandpa didn't move an inch. He just leaned back in his chair, eyes glinting. That, he said softly, was the sound of justice. The whole street was buzzing. Doyle Mason limping down Maple Court had turned into the day's entertainment. Neighbors whispered in driveways, stifling laughter as the self-appointed HOA patrol tried to spin the story. He told anyone who'd listen that Grandpa had installed illegal traps on his property. But most folks knew the truth. Everyone had seen Doyle's antics. Snooping in yards, measuring grass with a ruler, even peeking through curtains at night. The man was a menace. And for once he'd finally gotten a taste of his own medicine. Still, Doyle wasn't about to take the hit quietly. By noon, an emergency HOA meeting was called. I went with Grandpa just to keep things from boiling over, but I should have known it was going to be a circus. Linda Quay, the HOA president, sat at the head of the long table, pearls around her neck and that permanent fake smile plastered on her face. Doyle sat to her right, arm in a sling for dramatic effect. He pointed at Grandpa like he'd uncovered a crime scene. This man, Doyle declared, is endangering the neighborhood. He has rigged up an electrified weapon. That gate nearly killed me. Grandpa didn't flinch. He simply leaned forward, placed a folded piece of paper on the table, and said, "That, Mrs. Quay, is a permit issued under the state electrical code. Fully legal, clearly signed, and I posted the required warning notice." Linda tried to wiggle out of it. "Legal or not, it's aggressive. It goes against the spirit of community living. The HOA has the right to regulate installations." Grandpa's voice dropped into that gravelly tone that always made me sit straighter. "Regulate, sure. Trespass, no. North Carolina trespassing statute makes it a crime to enter private property without consent. Doyle has done it 3 times. I'm done warning him. Next time, I'll press charges and let a judge sort it out." You could feel the shift in the room. Neighbors who had been silent suddenly nodded. One woman spoke up. "Doyle came into my backyard last month to measure my shrub." An active electrical device on that gate? Yes, Grandpa replied evenly. Registered, permitted, posted with warnings, and recorded. Here's the paperwork. He slid the laminated permit across the porch table without even standing up. Then he handed over his phone, video still playing. The officers watched Doyle climb, cut and fry himself in full HD. One officer looked up, deadpan. So you trespassed? Doyle sputtered. No, I was conducting an inspection for the HOA. Inspection? The other officer raised a brow. At midnight? With bolt cutters? The law couldn't have been clearer. Under state code, Doyle was guilty of criminal trespassing, vandalism, and attempted theft. And his 911 stunt? That was a false police report. Another charge stacked on top. The officers cuffed him right there in front of the glowing gate. Doyle shouted about conspiracies, about Grandpa being a danger to the community, but nobody listened. Neighbors had gathered at the commotion, and for the first time they weren't whispering. They were clapping. Grandpa leaned back in his chair, nodded at me and said, "Sometimes, son, justice just needs a little electricity." Doyle, meanwhile, sat in the back of the cruiser, drenched in sweat, his reputation in shreds and his HOA badge confiscated on the spot. The gate he thought he could climb had turned into the very thing that destroyed him. Because when you mess with a man like Grandpa, you don't just lose the fight, you light the fuse for your whole HOA to come crashing down.